everyone, I'm Stormify, and today I'm going to show you how to use the character rigs on Live 2D Cubism for Glow the series. This is just going to be a basic tutorial explaining how the rigs work, not how to actually animate with them. But if you'd like to learn how to animate on Live 2D Cubism, I linked a tutorial in the description which I used, and I've been using Live 2D Cubism for about 4 months now, but it was quick to learn, so I recommend watching it if you'd like to learn how to. Okay, so if you get accepted to be an animator, you'll have access to channels such as this one, which is Visual Arts Resources. This is where you'll find all the resources you need to create whatever you're creating for your volunteer work. To access the rigs, I'm going to click on the first link, which takes us to the Glow Drive folder. There's multiple subcategories for different things, and while you won't need all of them, you have access to all of them, so if you'd like to just check them out, you can. When you become an animator, you're usually assigned a scene, which if you go to the animation folder, here's the spreadsheets indicating who's doing what and what's completed, plus instructions on how they work. And you'll also be, once you choose a scene, you'll also get a list of the characters that are in your scene. And in my scene, I have Cindy, Mr. Sunday, and Orion. So I'm going to go to character rigs. Cindy is a main character, so I'm going to click here. She's a villain, and there's Cindy. So now I'm ready to download the rigs, but how do I know which one to download? I'm downloading Cindy, and she's supposed to look like this in this scene, but we're gonna download this file, the one that says Cindy rig, not just Cindy, because this is basically an unrigged, a version of the rig that isn't rigged yet. That's why it has these weird hands. So if you download this version, it won't work properly. So make sure you download the version without an image, the one that says the character's name, then rig, and then also has CMO3, which means it's a live 2D file. Okay, so now we have the basic scene set up. We have Cindy, which is our first track. We have the living room of Cindy's penthouse, which I got it from the resources folder. And we also have the audio for this scene, which I also got from the resource folder. To access the parameters, what you're going to do is click the drop down arrow, Live 2D parameters, and the parameters should be in folders like this. We have lip sync, head, body, front and back arms, and front and back legs. The first parameter, lip sync, each character has a different default mouth. This is Cindy's right here. To control the lip sync, you're going to click on this red dot and then drag it to different dot placements on the screen and just choose a mouth that you want to use. I'm going to drag this arrow, and let me mute this audio since I'm not lip syncing to it right now. I'm going to drag this arrow from here to here. Then I'm going to select a different mouth. Let's do something simple like close the mouth. If you want to get it more exact, you can enter the numbers here, or I'm just going to use these sliding arrows to shut the mouth. Works like that. If you want it to be faster, highlight your two keyframes and then drag them closer. Drag them closer. And if you want it to be slower, you can drag them farther apart. But this is good. One thing I'd like to note about the lip sync, if you're trying to change the mouth, like let's say we're right here, see where this red dot is, and see when we're right here where this red dot is, the dot just moves straight across from up here to down here, which is why we get a smooth transition. But if I were to make a keyframe where the mouth is like this, the transition between here to here is not smooth. Like, look. Do you see how many different mouths it had to make before it got there? If you don't want this to happen where it makes a bunch of weird mouths, what you're going to want to do is take your two keyframes and place them super close to each other. I recommend zooming in. The more the better. And so basically, when the track plays, if your keyframes are close enough, oh yeah, and make sure you move two keyframes at once, because the way this is set up, there's two keyframes, so make sure when you highlight them, you select both. But you're going to want to make sure your keyframes are super close to each other. So now when it plays, there's no in-betweens. Maybe I want it to ease out a little bit, so I can do this. And then I can also do this. It's basically like if you were animating lip sync on Flip-a-Clip, which I actually made a tutorial for, and you can watch it if I link it. But it's basically like having two images and then having more images to make it warp, except because it's keyframes, you have to make sure that the keyframes are super close together when it's doing an extreme shift. Like, see, look at this red dot and look how it goes all the way over there. When you need to do that to do the lip sync, make sure that the keyframes are close together so you don't get a bunch of in-betweens. And to make the transition smooth, you can add keyframes slightly before and slightly after to add some like easing to it. Yep. Okay. The next parameter we have is the head parameter. So if we open this folder, we have head rotation, which lets us move our head back and forth. We have hair move and hair sway for the side, which moves the side hairs of Cindy. We have the back hair movement, which moves the back hair. We have blink, which lets us open and shut our eyes. We have eyeball X and Y, which lets us move the eyes however we want. We have brow up and down, and it's not like the brows actually move up and down. It's more like happy eyebrows, sad eyebrows. Like, you get what I mean. To move the brows up and down, you would use brow right and brow left Y to move it across the Y axis or up and down. We have the same thing for the X axis. You can move your eyebrows left and right. Depending on the rig, you might also have an angle for the left and right brow, which lets you arch them even more or lift them up even more, but that's not on Cindy's rig, but it is on some of the rig. We have eye switch, which lets us switch our eyes. Depending on the character, they may have more or less of these. The same thing applies to face shading. As you can see, nothing's showing up because there's face shading opacity, which changes the opaqueness of the face shading. See how it gets lighter and darker by moving this? Cindy's rig has two different face shading types, but there's usually others, like if you want your character to blush or if you want them to have like a red face for some reason. That's usually also there, but I didn't see the need of giving Cindy that. We have body rotation, move the body back and forth. We have breathing, the character is breathing or stretching up, scrunching down. If the character has something like a skirt, that would also be in here. So like the Clover Academy uniforms, the characters that have skirts, they would also have a parameter here which lets you move the skirt. Front arm, pretty basic. You can move the whole arm. You can move the lower arm. You can switch the hand. There's about 13 poses, but there can be more or less depending on the character. There's also front hand rotation, which lets you rotate the hand. And it applies to every pose, not just the first one. The same applies to the backhand. You can move the whole arm. You can move the lower arm. You can switch the hand poses, 13 poses. You can move the hand back and forth. And there's also one more pose that you can change. If you see this parameter, its backhand position, just by moving it, it doesn't seem like it's doing anything, but see how the lower arm is like here behind Cindy's back? If I move back arm position, it moves the lower arm in front. And keep in mind, it only moves the lower arm. So if I were to do this, yeah, don't do this. But you can use back arm position to change the arm's placement forward or backwards. Just make sure when you're animating, you do it in a natural way. We have front leg. You can move the whole leg back and forth. You can move the lower leg at the knee. And the same applies to the back leg. Whole leg, lower leg. And yeah, that's basically all the parameters and how to use the lip sync on our character rigs. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. I'll make sure to link a video on how to animate if you're still curious and want to know how. But if you'd like to audition, there's also a video going into more detail about what to expect and the different roles you can have as an animator. That will also be linked down below. And yeah, that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to stay breezy.